Heartbroken, she seeks solace with a stranger. Later, she discovers he's the new CEO at her workplace. How will their past night affect their future? And if you cherish your family and love videos like this, subscribe to our channel to have 10 years of luck in your life. The evening air felt suffocating as Ji-yoon stood frozen in the doorway of her family home. The scene before her defied comprehension. Her father and sister, Soo-min, locked in an intimate embrace in the study. Her coffee mug slipped from her fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor. The sound caused them to jump apart, their guilty expressions confirming her worst fears. Ji-yoon, wait! Soo-min called out, but Ji-yoon was already running, her heels clicking against the floor as she fled. She grabbed her car keys and purse, ignoring her father's voice calling after her. The betrayal cut deeper than she could have imagined. Her sister, her closest confidant since their mother's death, had crossed an unforgivable line. Ji-yoon drove aimlessly through Seoul's busy streets, her vision blurred by unshed tears. The neon signs of the business district blazed against the darkening sky. She pulled into the parking lot of the Crystal, an upscale bar she'd never visited before. Inside, the atmosphere was sophisticated, all dark wood and subtle lighting. She chose a seat at the far end of the bar, away from the clusters of well-dressed professionals unwinding after work. "Whiskey neat," she told the bartender, her voice steadier than she felt. The first sip burned, but the second went down easier. The bar sound system played a mix of jazz and contemporary music, the kind that invited forgetting. Ji-yoon closed her eyes, letting the melody wash over her. Each drink made the image of her sister and father grow hazier, though the pain remained sharp. After her third drink, she became aware of someone watching her. 2 seats down, a man in an impeccably tailored suit observed her with unconcealed interest. Under normal circumstances, Ji-yoon would have ignored him, but tonight was different. Tonight, she wanted to feel anything but the crushing weight of betrayal. Their eyes met. He had the kind of face that commanded attention, strong jawline, intelligent eyes, and a slight smile that suggested he was used to getting what he wanted. He moved to the seat next to her with a grace that spoke of confidence. "You look like you're trying to forget something," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "Isn't everyone here?" Ji-yoon replied, surprising herself with her boldness. He introduced himself as Min-ho, offering no surname or title. They talked, and Ji-yoon found herself drawn to his presence. He listened without judgment as she spoke about betrayal in abstract terms, never revealing the specific horror she'd witnessed. The alcohol and his attention created a comfortable bubble, insulating her from reality. When he suggested they leave together, Ji-yoon knew she should decline. She had never been the type for one-night stands, but tonight the rules of her ordinary life seemed distant and irrelevant. His hotel suite was luxurious, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Their first kiss was tentative, but the ones that followed grew increasingly passionate. Min-ho's touch was skilled and confident, drawing responses from her body she hadn't known were possible. They moved together with an intensity that bordered on desperation, Ji-yoon seeking escape, Min-ho pursuing something she couldn't name. In those hours, she forgot about her family's betrayal, lost in the sensation of his hands, his lips, the weight of his body against hers. Later, as the first hints of dawn colored the sky, Ji-yoon slipped out of bed while Min-ho slept. She gathered her clothes quietly, pausing only once to look at his sleeping form. In the pale morning light, he looked younger, almost vulnerable. She left without leaving a note. There was no need. This had been about escape, nothing more. As she rode the elevator down to the lobby, Ji-yoon felt hollow. The night's passion had provided temporary relief, but reality waited. She would need to find a new place to live, to somehow face her family again. At least she had her job, the one constant in her life she could rely on. Tomorrow, she would focus on work, on building her future. She would be strong, independent, and above all, professional. What she didn't know, as she stepped out into the morning air, was that her night of escape would follow her into that carefully planned future, complicating everything she thought she knew about herself and what she wanted from life. Monday morning arrived with brutal clarity. Ji-yoon stepped into the elevator at Park Industries, adjusting her blazer and mentally preparing for another week. The doors were about to close when a familiar hand stopped them. Her heart stopped. Min-ho walked in, wearing an executive suit that made him look even more imposing than she remembered. Their eyes met in the mirrored walls. Recognition flashed across his face, followed by genuine surprise. Neither spoke as other employees filed in, creating a suffocating atmosphere of forced politeness. Ji-yoon stared straight ahead, her pulse racing. When the elevator reached the executive floor, Min-ho stepped out. She noticed others bowing respectfully to him. During the morning team meeting, her worst fears were confirmed. "Please welcome our new CEO, Park Min-ho," her department head announced. Ji-yoon felt the blood drain from her face. The man she'd spent a passionate night with wasn't just any executive. He was Park Min-ho, heir to Park Industries and her new boss. Throughout the presentation, Min-ho maintained perfect professionalism, but his eyes kept finding her in the crowd. Each glance felt like an electric shock. Ji-yoon focused on her notebook, writing meaningless notes to avoid meeting his gaze. The meeting seemed to stretch for hours. Back at her desk, Ji-yoon tried to concentrate on work, but her computer screen blurred before her eyes. A message popped up on her company chat. "My office. 2 p.m. PMH. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard before she typed a simple, "Yes, sir." The hours crawled by. At exactly 2 p.m., Ji-yoon knocked on Min-ho's office door. His secretary waved her in immediately. The office was spacious, with views of Seoul's skyline that reminded her too much of his hotel room. "Miss Kim," Min-ho said formally, standing behind his desk. "Please sit." "Mr. Park," she responded, proud of how steady her voice sounded. They stared at each other for a long moment before Min-ho spoke. "I think we need to address what happened." "Nothing happened," Ji-yoon said quickly. "It was one night. We didn't know who each other was. We can be professional about this." Min-ho's expression tightened slightly. "Of course, professional." He paused. "However, I want to ensure you feel comfortable in your position here. If you'd prefer a transfer to another department no." Ji-yoon interrupted. "I've worked hard for my position. I won't let one incident affect my career." The afternoon strategy meeting proved challenging. Ji-yoon presented her team's quarterly projections, acutely aware of Min-ho's presence at the head of the table. When their eyes met during her presentation, the air seemed to crackle with unspoken tension. She noticed curious glances from her colleagues, particularly when Min-ho asked detailed questions about her proposals. After the meeting, whispers followed Ji-yoon down the hallway. Her colleague Soo-jin caught up with her at the water cooler. "The new CEO seemed very interested in your presentation," she said casually. "Have you worked with him before?" "No," Ji-yoon replied shortly. "I suppose he's just thorough." But throughout the day, their paths kept crossing. In the copy room, Min-ho reached for the same file as Ji-yoon, their fingers brushing. At lunch, they ended up in the same elevator again. Each encounter left Ji-yoon more flustered than the last. By day's end, the office was buzzing with speculation about the new CEO's apparent interest in their department. Ji-yoon packed her bag quickly, wanting to escape. As she waited for the elevator, Min-ho appeared again. This time, they were alone. The tension was unbearable. Just as Ji-yoon was about to speak, Min-ho's phone rang, his secretary reminding him about dinner with potential investors. The elevator arrived at the lobby, and they parted ways without a word. In her apartment that night, Ji-yoon lay awake, thinking about how quickly her life had complicated. She'd sought escape from one problem only to create another. The worst part wasn't the awkwardness or the office gossip. It was the undeniable fact that despite everything, she couldn't stop thinking about him. During a late-night review of company files, Ji-yoon stumbled upon information that made her stomach churn. A series of emails between Min-ho and the board of directors revealed intense pressure for him to marry Ha-yoon, the daughter of their largest business partner. The marriage would secure a crucial merger, potentially saving hundreds of jobs. Ji-yoon closed the files, feeling like an intruder. She shouldn't have seen this, but now the knowledge weighed heavily on her mind. The next day, at the annual corporate gala, this information colored everything she observed. The event was held at the Grand Hyatt, with crystal chandeliers reflecting off marble floors. Ji-yoon wore a navy blue dress that had cost a month's salary, determined to project confidence. She watched as Min-ho worked the room, every inch the capable CEO. But she noticed things others might miss: the tension in his shoulders, the way his smile didn't reach his eyes. Ha-yoon arrived fashionably late, turning heads in a designer gown. She was everything Ji-yoon wasn't: born into wealth, groomed for high society. Throughout the evening, Min-ho's parents steered him toward Ha-yoon, orchestrating seemingly casual encounters. Each time, Min-ho's gaze would drift to Ji-yoon before quickly looking away. During a presentation about the company's future, Ji-yoon focused on her tablet, reviewing quarterly projections. A movement caught her eye. Min-ho had stepped onto a balcony alone. Without thinking, she followed him. "Escaping your own party?" she asked, keeping her voice light. Min-ho turned, surprise flickering across his face. "Sometimes it's necessary to breathe." He loosened his tie slightly. "How are you finding the evening, Miss Kim?" "It's enlightening," she replied carefully. "Your future bride seems accomplished." His head snapped toward her. "You know about that? Companies have few secrets from their financial analysts," she said, immediately regretting her honesty. Min-ho's expression darkened. "It's not. I haven't." He stopped, composing himself. "The situation is complicated." Before he could elaborate, his mother's voice called from inside. "Min-ho? Ha-yoon's father wants to discuss the merger." "I should go," he said, straightening his tie. He paused at the doorway. "Ji-yoon, not everything is as it appears." Back at her desk the following week, Ji-yoon threw herself into work. She took on extra projects, stayed late, anything to keep her mind occupied. But Min-ho's presence was inescapable. Every meeting, every company-wide email, every casual encounter in the hallway reminded her of what she couldn't have. During one particularly late night, as she reviewed marketing strategies, Min-ho appeared at her desk. The office was nearly empty. "You've been here since 7 a.m., he said, not a question. "The Anderson project needs attention," she replied, not looking up. "The Anderson project is ahead of schedule. You're avoiding something." His voice was soft but insistent. Ji-yoon finally met his gaze. "We can't do this. You have obligations, expectations. I have my career to think about. Is that what you really want? To pretend there's nothing here?" Before she could answer, his phone buzzed. Another message about Ha-yoon, another reminder of reality. Min-ho checked the message, his jaw tightening. "I should go," he said, echoing their conversation from the balcony. "Just don't work too late." After he left, Ji-yoon stared at her computer screen, the numbers blurring before her eyes. She thought about Ha-yoon, about mergers and obligations, about the weight of family expectations. She thought about her own family's betrayal, how it had led her to this moment. The next morning, she requested to be removed from projects requiring direct interaction with the CEO's office. Her supervisor raised an eyebrow, but approved the request. If Min-ho noticed her absence from subsequent meetings, he didn't mention it. In his penthouse apartment, Min-ho poured a third glass of whiskey while his best friend, director Young Hae-won, watched with concern. The city lights twinkled below, but Min-ho's thoughts were elsewhere. "You're not sleeping," Hae-won observed, settling into a leather armchair. "Is it the merger? Or something else?" Min-ho swirled the amber liquid in his glass. "Have you ever wanted something you know you shouldn't?" Hae-won leaned forward. "This is about the financial analyst, Kim Ji-eun." Min-ho's sharp look confirmed it. "She's brilliant," he admitted. "Every report, every analysis, perfect. But it's more than that. She sees through the corporate facade, understands the pressure, without judgment. Unlike Ha-yoon, Hae-won supplied. Hayoonish." Min-ho paused, choosing his words carefully. "She's what my parents want. The perfect chaebol marriage. But Ji-yoon, she challenges me. Makes me question everything I've accepted as inevitable." Meanwhile, across the city, Ji-yoon sat in a high-end restaurant with an important client. Mr. Chun, representing a major Chinese investment firm, praised her presentation extensively. "Your analysis of market trends is exceptional," Mr. Chun said. "Park Industries is fortunate to have you." Ji-yoon smiled politely, but her mind wandered to Min-ho. She'd heard he'd been in meetings all day with Ha-yoon's father. The merger discussions were progressing. Later that evening, fate intervened. Ji-yoon was leaving the office when the elevator malfunctioned, trapping her with Min-ho between floors. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. "We can't keep avoiding each other," Min-ho said after several minutes of tense silence. "We're not avoiding each other. We're being professional," Ji-yoon replied, though her racing heart betrayed her calm exterior. "Is that what you call requesting reassignment from all executive projects?" Ji-yoon turned to face him. "What do you want from me, Min-ho? You're practically engaged." "The merger dash. I never wanted the merger," he interrupted. "Or Ha-yoon. My father built this company from nothing. He expects me to secure its future. But what? But I can't stop thinking about that night. About you. About how you see me as Min-ho, not just the park heir." The elevator lurched, then started moving again. They had precious seconds before reality intruded. "I'm scared," Ji-yoon admitted quietly. "Not of my feelings for you, but of losing myself again. After what happened with my family." The doors opened to the lobby. Security waited with concerned expressions. The moment of vulnerability evaporated as they stepped out, once again CEO and employee. That night, neither slept well. Ji-yoon thought about Min-ho's confession, about the weight of expectations they both carried. Min-ho stared at Ha-yoon's contact photo on his phone, unable to make the call his parents expected. The next day, they maintained their professional distance, but something had shifted. Their careful avoidance had transformed into a shared secret, a mutual understanding of the impossible situation they faced. During a budget meeting, their eyes met across the conference table. In that brief moment, both recognized the dangerous truth. They'd been fighting. Their connection went beyond physical attraction or forbidden romance. They understood each other's struggles, fears, and aspirations in a way no one else did. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning. Ji-yoon read it 3 times to ensure she wasn't misunderstanding. The company's Shanghai office wanted her as their new financial director. It was the promotion of a lifetime, higher salary, international exposure, and complete departmental control. Her first instinct was to share the news with Min-ho, but she stopped herself. Their complicated relationship had already influenced too many of her decisions. The Shanghai position offered an escape, a chance to prove herself without the shadow of their attraction hanging over her. Word spread quickly through the office. By afternoon, Min-ho called her to his office, the email displayed on his screen. "When were you planning to tell me?" His voice was controlled, but his grip on his pen betrayed his tension. "I haven't accepted yet," Ji-yoon replied, standing near the door, maintaining a safe distance. "But you're considering it." "It wasn't a question. Wouldn't you? It's an incredible opportunity." Min-ho stood, walking to the window. "Shanghai is 6 hours away by plane. The position is for 3 years minimum. Are you speaking as my CEO or as?" She trailed off, unsure how to define what they were to each other. He turned, his expression pained. "Does it matter? Either way, I'm losing you." The word, losing, hung between them, heavy with implications. Before Ji-yoon could respond, his secretary buzzed. Ha-yoon's father was waiting for their scheduled lunch. That evening, Ji-yoon stayed late, weighing her options. The Shanghai position offered everything she'd worked for. Yet the thought of leaving Seoul, leaving Min-ho, created a physical ache in her chest. Min-ho found her there, the office dark except for her desk lamp. His tie was loose, his hair slightly disheveled from running his hands through it, signs of a stressful day. "We need to talk about this," he said, pulling up a chair. "About what?" "My career opportunity, or the fact that you're practically engaged." Ji-yoon's voice carried an edge she hadn't intended. "That's not fair. You know the situation with Ha-yoon is complicated." No, what's not fair is feeling guilty about advancing my career because of whatever this is between us. Minho leaned forward. This isn't just attraction, Jiyoon. You know that. Then what is it? Are you going to cancel the merger? Tell your parents you're choosing a middle-class financial analyst over their perfect match? Risk everything your father built. The silence that followed was deafening. Minho's struggle played across his face, duty warring with desire. I thought so, Jiyoon said softly, gathering her things. Maybe Shanghai is exactly what we both need. Jiyoon. Wait, but she was already walking away, her heels clicking against the floor, each step feeling like a small betrayal to her heart. In the elevator, she finally let the tears fall. The promotion should have been a moment of triumph. Instead, it felt like she was being forced to choose between her ambitions and her heart. The next day, they avoided each other completely. Jiyoon threw herself into research about Shanghai, trying to convince herself she was excited about the move. Minho had back-to-back meetings about the merger, each one feeling more suffocating than the last. In her temporary apartment, Jiyoon stared at the Shanghai offer letter on her coffee table. The deadline for her decision loomed 3 days away. Her laptop displayed apartment listings in Shanghai's French concession, all sleek and modern, promising a fresh start. Her phone buzzed with news notifications. Park Industry stock had risen following rumors of the upcoming merger announcement. Attached was a photo of Minho and Hayoon at a charity gala, looking every bit the perfect chaebol couple.
Ayun burastun.
Ning red designer dress, her hand resting comfortably on Minho's arm. Meanwhile, Minho sat through another family dinner at his parents' mansion. His mother, elegant as always, directed the conversation toward wedding preparations. The Parks and Kims have been friends for generations, she remarked, sipping her wine. Hayoon would make such a lovely bride. The spring ceremony we're planning. Nothing's been decided yet, mother. Minho interrupted, his patience wearing thin. His father lowered his newspaper. The merger paperwork is almost complete. The wedding is the final piece. Why are you hesitating? Before Minho could respond, his mother continued, Hayoon's family is hosting a gala next week. All the important families will be there. It would be the perfect opportunity to make the announcement. Minho loosened his tie, feeling trapped. I have meetings to prepare for. Excuse me. He left the dining room, ignoring his mother's disappointed sigh. The next day, at a high-profile business lunch, Minho was seated next to Hayoon. She was objectively perfect, educated at Harvard, fluent in 4 languages, and thoroughly versed in corporate politics. She smiled at all the right moments, made intelligent conversation, and expertly navigated social dynamics. Your company's expansion plans are ambitious, Hayoon commented. The merger would provide the stability needed for such growth. Minho nodded automatically, his thoughts drifting to Jiyoon's empty desk. She'd taken a personal day to apartment hunt in Shanghai via video calls. Later that afternoon, Jiyoon returned to the office to find an elegant invitation on her desk, the Kim family gala. Everyone knew what it meant. The merger announcement was imminent. In the break room, she overheard 2 colleagues discussing the upcoming event. I heard he's announcing the engagement that night, one whispered. Hayoon already picked out the ring. They make such a perfect couple, the other replied. Both from such prestigious families. Jiyoon gripped her coffee cup tighter, the hot liquid burning her palm. She turned to leave but found herself face to face with Minho. The look they exchanged spoke volumes, his eyes pleading, hers filled with resignation. That evening, Minho sat in his office, a small velvet box on his desk. Inside was the engagement ring his mother had chosen, a family heirloom meant for Hayoon. He closed the box without opening it, reached for his phone, then stopped. What could he possibly say to Jiyoon? In her apartment, Jiyoon typed out her response to the Shanghai offer, then deleted it. She repeated this process several times, each version feeling more wrong than the last. On her TV, a business news channel discussed Park Industries' bright future, showing clips of Minho and Hayoon at various events. The weight of expectations pressed down on both of them from opposite ends of the city, Minho's family legacy and Jiyoon's professional ambitions pulling them in different directions, while their hearts fought against the current. The drive to Minho's penthouse felt like the longest journey of Ji-yoon's life. She debated this decision all day, but seeing the gala invitation had pushed her to action. The security guard recognized her from corporate events, waving her through to the private elevator. Standing outside his door, Ji-yoon hesitated. It was 9 p.m. on a Wednesday, completely inappropriate for a workplace subordinate to visit her CEO at home. Before she could reconsider, the door opened. Minho stood there in casual clothes, his hair slightly damp from a shower. "Ji-yoon," he said, surprise evident in his voice. "How did you dash? We need to talk," she interrupted. "Really talk. No interruptions, no corporate masks." He stepped aside, letting her enter. The penthouse was minimally furnished but elegant, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Seoul's nightscape. An open laptop on the coffee table displayed the merger docu. "Mince. Would you like something to drink?" Minho asked, falling back on politeness. "No. I want honesty." Ji-yoon turned to face him. "What are we doing, Minho?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as a sign of internal struggle. "I don't know," he admitted. "Every time I try to do what's expected of me, I think about you. And every time I try to focus on my career, I think about you," she countered. "But thinking isn't enough. The gala is next week. Shanghai wants an answer. We're running out of time." Minho moved closer, close enough that Ji-yoon could smell his cologne. "What do you want me to say? That I'll give up everything my family built? That I'll disappoint everyone who depends on me?" "No." Ji-yoon stepped back. "I want you to be honest about whether there's any future here. Because right now, we're both living in a fantasy." The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Minho spoke, his voice quiet. "I care about you more than I should. More than is safe for either of us. But it's not enough." Ji-yoon finished for him. "No, I understand. Really." She moved toward the door. "The merger will secure jobs. The marriage will unite families. It's the responsible choice." "Is that why you're choosing Shanghai?" There was a hint of accusation in his voice. Ji-yoon paused, her hand on the doorknob. "I'm choosing myself. Because if I stay, watching you with her, it would destroy me." Before he could respond, she left, the door closing softly behind her. In the elevator, she pressed her forehead against the cool metal wall, fighting back tears. It was done. She had her answer. The next day, Ji-yoon submitted her acceptance to the Shanghai position. She arranged for movers, started apartment paperwork, and requested the necessary visa documents. Each task felt like another brick in the wall she was building between her heart and her future. Minho received her transfer request with formal professionalism, signing it without comment. Their only interaction was through corporate emails, copied to HR and relevant department heads. The distance between them grew, measured not in meters, but in unspoken words and avoided glances. Minho's office became a prison of his own making. Between merger meetings and wedding discussions, he buried himself in work, staying long after everyone else had left. His secretary noted his deteriorating mood, but attributed it to pre-merger stress. During a particularly late night, he found himself staring at Ji-yoon's employee file on his computer. Her new position in Shanghai was already posted in the system, financial director, starting in 3 weeks. The thought made his chest tighten. He pulled up their last project together. Her analysis had been flawless, identifying potential risks others had missed. How many times had he used her reports as an excuse to call her to his office? How many late-night discussions had started about numbers, but ended with them sharing pieces of themselves? Across the city, Ji-yoon sat in her half-packed apartment. Moving boxes surrounded her, each one labeled meticulously, a poor attempt at controlling the chaos she felt inside. Her phone showed missed calls from the Shanghai office, eager to discuss her upcoming transition. She picked up a framed photo of her old team, taken at last year's company dinner. Minho wasn't in it. It was before he became CEO, before everything changed. She carefully wrapped it in bubble wrap, trying not to think about the memories it held. The silence of her apartment was interrupted by her phone ringing. Her heart jumped seeing Min-ho's name on the screen. It was 11 p.m., far too late for a business call. She let it go to voicemail, then immediately regretted it. Min-ho stared at his phone, his unanswered call feeling like a final confirmation. He opened his desk drawer, pulling out a small notebook. Inside were notes from their first official meeting, her pre-sin. Taeyeon had impressed him even before he knew who she was. Before their night together. Before everything became complicated. His phone buzzed with a message from Hyun. Father wants to meet tomorrow about the announcement speech. He didn't respond. Ji-yoon's phone lit up again, this time with a text from Min-ho. I can't focus on anything. Every report reminds me of your analyses. Every meeting feels empty, without your insights. I keep trying to convince myself this is the right path, but... She read the message multiple times, her hands shaking. Before she could respond, another message appeared. I miss you. Those 3 words shattered her carefully constructed walls. She typed and deleted several responses before settling on. It's too late, Min-ho. We both made our choices. In his office, Min-ho read her response, the finality of it hitting him hard. He pulled up the merger documents, the culmination of months of negotiation. Everything was in order, ready for the announcement at the gala. His father would be proud. The company would be secure. So, why did it feel like he was losing everything that mattered? Ji-yoon spent the night sorting through her belongings, deciding what to take to Shanghai. Each item sparked memories. The dress she wore to her first executive presentation, the notebook from her first meeting with Min-ho, the coffee mug she'd used during their late-night working sessions. Ji-yoon's return to Seoul wasn't planned. A visa processing delay had forced her to reschedule her Shanghai departure, leaving her in limbo during what should have been her first week in China. The familiar city streets felt different now, charged with possibility and dread. She hadn't told anyone she was still in Seoul, especially not Min-ho. The gala was tomorrow night. The papers had been speculating about the merger announcement for weeks. Yet here she was, sitting in a cafe across from Park Industries, watching employees stream in and out of the building. Min-ho stood in his office, adjusting his tie for the 5th time that morning. The speech for tomorrow's announcement sat on his desk, carefully crafted by the PR team. Hyun had approved it, his parents had blessed it, and the board was eager for it. Everything was perfect on paper. He turned to look out his window, his eyes automatically finding the cafe across the street, the one where he'd often seen Ji-yoon getting her morning coffee. A familiar figure caught his attention. His heart stopped. It couldn't be. Before he could second-guess himself, he was in the elevator, then crossing the street. Ji-yoon saw him coming but didn't run. She couldn't nod anymore. You're supposed to be in Shanghai, he said, sliding into the seat across from her.
Visa delay.
She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. I'm leaving next week instead. The morning bustle of the cafe faded into background noise as they stared at each other, really looked at each other for the first time in weeks. Tomorrow's the gala, Ji-yoon said finally. Yes. The merger announcement. Yes. And Hyun. Min-ho's silence was answer enough. Ji-yoon stood, unable to bear it anymore. I should go. Wait. Min-ho caught her wrist. Come to my office. Please. We need to talk. The elevator ride to his floor was tense, filled with unspoken words. His secretary's surprised expression at seeing Ji-yoon quickly smoothed into professional neutrality. Inside his office, Ji-yoon remained standing, unwilling to settle into the familiar comfort of their old dynamic. What is there to talk about, Min-ho? The merger is happening. The wedding is planned. I'm leaving for Shanghai. Is that what you really want? His voice was quiet, intense. What I want. Ji-yoon laughed, but it held no humor. I wanted to build my career, without complications. I wanted to forget that night we met. I wanted to not fall in love with someone who belongs to another world. The word love hung between them, finally spoken aloud.
Minash.
Oh moved closer, his professional facade cracking. I've been trying to convince myself that duty is enough. That doing what's expected will bring satisfaction. But every time I imagine my future with Hyun, all I see is you. Don't, Ji-yoon whispered. Don't say things that make me want to stay. He reached for her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. Then tell me you don't feel the same. Tell me Shanghai is what you really want. Their eyes met, years of corporate training and professional distance dissolving in that moment of raw honesty. Neither heard his office door open until a voice broke through their bubble. I think, said Haewon from the doorway, there's something you both need to know. Haewon closed the office door behind him, his expression grave. I've been investigating the timing of certain events, he said, pulling out a folder. Specifically, the night Jiun caught her sister with her father.
Yin Skifenet.
Minho moved closer to her instinctively. Your sister, Sumin, had been planning this for months. Haewon continued. I found emails between her and several board members. She knew about the merger negotiations before anyone else. She knew about Minho taking over as CEO. Jiun's hands began to shake. What are you saying? Sumin orchestrated everything. She knew you were being considered for promotion to a position that would work closely with the new CEO. She needed you out of the way. Haewon spread several documents on Minho's desk. She arranged for your father to be there that night, manipulated the situation so you would catch them. She knew you would run. Minho picked up one of the emails, his jaw tightening as he read. She even knew which bar you would likely go to, the one closest to your apartment. But Jiun's voice faltered. Why? Because, Haewon said softly, she wanted your position. And she knew that if you formed a connection with Minho, it would complicate the merger plans. The night you met wasn't coincidence. She was eliminating a threat before it became one. Jiun sank into a chair, memories realigning with this new information. Her sister's strange behavior in the weeks before, the convenient timing, the way she'd pushed Jiun to take that particular route home that night. Minho's phone buzzed Hyun again. He silenced it without looking. The merger announcement, he said slowly. It's not just about business, is it? Haewon shook his head. Sumin has been promised a senior position post-merger. She's been working with Hyun's family all along.
Yoon stood abruptly, anger replacing shock.
All this time, I've been blaming myself, questioning everything. And it was all a game to her. Minho reached for her hand, no longer caring about appearances. We've both been played, but now we know. The gala is tomorrow, Haewon reminded them. Everyone will be there. The board, Hyun's family, Sumin. Minho looked at Jiun, something shifting in his expression. Then perhaps it's time for a different kind of announcement. Jiun met his gaze, understanding dawning. What are you thinking? I'm thinking, Minho said, a determined glint in his eye, that the truth deserves to be heard. And that some things are worth fighting for, even if it means rewriting the story everyone expects. He pulled Jiun closer, no longer concerned about who might see. Stay, he said softly. Not for the company, not for revenge, but for us. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Jiun looked at the Shanghai documents on his desk, then at the merger papers. Finally, she looked at Minho, really looked at him. Together, she agreed. Tomorrow would bring chaos. There would be scandals, resignations, and restructuring. The carefully planned merger would transform into something entirely different. But in that moment, as Minho held Jiun close, both finally understood that some ambitions were worth sacrificing for love, while others were worth guiding for together. The next chapter of their story would be written on their own terms.